On the morning of May 2nd, Ribault returned to Mayport, or the South Bank, we believe to be Mayport, and there he erected a column. He had brought 5 columns from France on his ship. This was probably the first, we believe to be the first, of columns that were left on the land. There he claimed that land for France and for his God. There he made every effort to establish what would become a haven for these people of France. Unfortunately, he was to sail away on May 3rd, thinking that he would return very soon. But he did sail north, looking for other places of colonization. So I believe at this point he had chosen 2 places, one on the north bank, one on the south bank of our own city, Jacksonville, Florida.
And we can come back into Sept now if we want, because we're going to more rapidly tell the rest of the story. So he left these columns and then stopped briefly north of here as well, up near Beaufort. You want to talk about that a little bit and just kind of quickly summarize? It's a lot of story to summarize.
It is a lot of story, yeah. But on May 25th, Ribault did find another deep water port that he felt would be a good place for colonization. He planted a column there, and it was at present-day Paris Island, and a colony was built. 30 men were to stay there as Ribault sailed home looking for reinforcements for colonization back in what he called New France.
And again, for Ribault, these were all about colonies where Protestants could worship freely. That's the foundation that we all talk about today with the Pilgrims. But keep going. So as the story unfolds.
So Ribault did return to France, but unfortunately by the time he arrived in Dieppe, civil war had broken out. By the time they were sailing, actually soon after they sailed for this new world, civil war did break out, and his hometown, Dieppe, was under siege. He fled to England. He had left 30 men seeking colonization in this new world. He needed help to carry forth that vision, but to rescue those men or to reinforce them.
And he went to England to ask for help, ask the crown for help.
He fled to England, where his journal that we have today was written and distributed throughout Europe. That helped his cause as he approached Elizabeth I. Now, again, as I said, this was the focal point of Western Europe. We look at now Philip II of Spain, who had attempted colonization in this area, Catherine de' Medici, who has sent those who would colonize, and now Elizabeth I, who had also in her mind attempts at colonization. And he piqued her interest, and she did commit ships to help come back to find a way to colonize on the land that was now Beaufort and Jacksonville. Unfortunately, a twist in that Civil War happened, and there was some doubt put on his credibility. Ribault ended up in the Tower of London, unable to sail back.
Pretty fascinating stuff.
It
so
is
now Ribault is stuck in the Tower of London, but while he's there, ships sail to start one of those colonies right here. So if we can rapidly move to that.
Okay, I want to take us back a little bit to Charlesfort, because we still have 30 men at Charlesfort.
I'm sorry, they were forgotten more than just by me, weren't they?
Yeah. They were making their own plans, waiting on reinforcements that did not come. They built a ship, which intrigues me, that men with little that we have in modern day society were able to build a ship and set sail for France. Now, what is the most intriguing part of them getting back to France, to me, is a man who really betrayed Ribault, whose name was Stukely, set sail, looking for whatever treasures. He encountered these very men in the Atlantic Ocean. So they were rescued by Mr. Stukely. They were returned to England. Some were in prison. Some made their way back to France. In the meantime, war did end. And Gaspard de Coligny felt that it was the time to try again the colonization.
With or without Ribault?
With or without, this
Ribault.
time without. And he chose Renee de Laudonnière,
Now,
who
we
then
only
second in
have 10
command.
minutes left for the entire show, so we're going to quickly move in this.
And a colony was
Okay.
established here on this land, and Laudonnière was the governor of that first colony. And for 2 years, about 2 years, those men, women, and children lived on our land as colonists. They shared their faith, they lived everyday life, and they struggled because there were no reinforcements. They struggled for food. But just when they were about to give up, Ribault had been freed, and 7 ships came for reinforcements. Unfortunately, about the same time, Philip II of Spain decided he would not have these heretics on his land. So 28 ships were sent from Spain to eradicate La Caroline. They did not all make it here, but there was the first international battle of America off our coast at Mayport as Pedro Menendez attacked the French ships. And then what ensued was the massacre of La Caroline.
Almost complete.
Almost complete
Hundreds
massacre
died,
of women,
hundreds.
men, and children. And then a few did escape, and that's why we have their journals. And then as Ribault was shipwrecked and his attempt to protect his fort, he also met the Spanish at a place called Matanzas. And after days of negotiation, the parley that they had, did put down his weapons, and the French presented themselves as prisoners of war. Unfortunately, Pedro Menendez just saw them as an enemy, and most of the men were slaughtered at Matanzas.
And of course, a result of this that we see very clearly just south of this, when Menendez came here to vanquish the colony at La Caroline, that was when St. Augustine was established.
It was.
So St. Augustine, from that event, because of this land up here where we all live, today's Jacksonville, that is how St. Augustine really got its start with the pursuit of that fort. It's an amazing story. It's one that seems too infrequently told, and because of that, and we're going to just jump ahead here, at the 400th anniversary, we're already at the 450th, the 400th anniversary, the DAR stepped up to the plate and started doing some things. And let's talk a little bit about what the DAR did on the 400th and even subsequent, even before that, so we remember this great colony that was here.
Right. Well, Jean Ribault did kind of start a land rush for the Americas. And in 1924, there was a replica of that.
And we have that image. I'm sorry, Joan, to interrupt you already.
Okay.
Get started, and we'll get that image. There you go, Joan, go ahead.
They got together, and the state put together a committee and commissioned a replica of that monument to be constructed and put at Mayport.
And when you say the state, you mean the state DAR. Okay. So this was,
And we had 2 local DAR chapters at that time, and others in the state. It was the Jacksonville chapter and the Mariah Jefferson chapter were here locally, and then other chapters probably west of here were made up the state. And those ladies raised funds to have that column made, and
placed at Mayport.
Placed at Mayport on property that was donated by Elizabeth P. Stark, who owned Wonderwood, which is now presently where the Naval Air Station is at Mayport.
And for years and years, it was enjoyed there, and we're going to look at another image of that. And there were even events nearby.
Plenty of events.
Sunrise service.
Sunrise Easter services were huge there. Local people enjoyed it there frequently. And then eventually, when the Navy base was built, you did have as much access eventually, and the column was moved to the outer entrance of the Naval Air Station. And then in 1958, it went from that entrance to its present location.
And we're going to look at another image now well, first of all, this is taking, removing it, so we will rapidly move ahead to, after this, it was taken up out of Mayport. That's what it shows. Right. This is no small column.
No, it's not. It weighs 6 tons.
Yes.
And the DAR had the option of moving it to a city park in Jacksonville Beach or moving it to the Fort Caroline National Park. And the state made a decision to move it to the national park.
We'll move to that image now as well. There you go, when it was placed, and there's the dedication ceremony for the relocation.
Yes, and it was dedicated by our state regent, and Congressman Charles Bennett was there for the dedication of that. And he challenged us to continue on with the remembrance of this story. And after that, the national park was built, and the replica of the fort was built after this. This was the beginnings of his vision for that whole area, and he's written several books on this story.
He was a grand scholar of this entire episode in Florida's history, and did work and forged areas in this research that we're so grateful for. Now to the next image, Joan. That's just that dedication day. Yes,
it is. And I'm sorry, but I'm not sure which one of our ladies that is.
I can say the clothes became a little bit more modern between 1924 and 1958 during the relocation. Still certainly dated, but lovely. Women are still in their daytime hats in 1958, especially for something as important as a rededication of that monument. But there is, of course, Congressman Bennett. And back to Sept now. And here we are now at the 450th anniversary.
Yes,
and
we are.
I know that you are not just the regent of the Jean Ribault chapter, and I hope everybody's noticing I'm saying Jean Ribault and not Jean Ribault, as so frequently said in this area, but also you are the regent for a series of Northeast, for a group of Northeast DAR chapters, and I know that they will have a program during the time one of the chapters, the Jacksonville chapter.
The Jacksonville chapter is having Lynn Corley speak at their May 8th meeting, and she will be there giving a program for them, and then there'll also be several other programs going throughout the city. And the DAR encourages everybody to get out, look at your local newspaper, and see what kind of events are going on throughout the city, and definitely get out and go to them and enjoy them and celebrate this history.
Well, and we appreciate all that the DAR has done through the decades. And Lynn, let's talk about some of those events, and let's talk about the fact we want our city to be involved and not sleep through this, become familiar with it. Let's mention a couple of events that they can join in on that May 1 particularly.
On May 1st, we will have the unveiling of the Lee Adams mural of the Ribault column, and we have that here on our set.
A little miniature in Sept.
A little miniature.
This mural is 8 feet high and 30 feet long. So this is just a very, and they may zoom in on this in a minute while we continue to talk. And that will be on the 4th floor of the downtown library.
It will. And the goal of this is to give a visual for people to ask questions, to see. This mural is not new. It has a life of its own, but it now will be displayed for the public to see, and it's a beautiful mural.
And we have only about a minute and a half left, but I'll briefly say the Lee Adams mural is the mural that so often talked about was in the Sears Ribault room, Sears and Roebuck, where people would go down for lunch in this lovely, glorious room on the river with this 30-foot mural. And when Sears was torn down at that location, the mural sort of bounced around. Now it will end up in a grand public spot and dedicated on that all-important May 1st day when Jean Ribault actually arrived at the mouth of the St. John's. There'll be other events that day as well, but that is certainly one of the important ones. And people can just go to coj.net, commemorate 450 to find out all the events. Briefly, let's see, we have a minute or so left. I will mention the Jacksonville Historical Society has a program February 28th. Archaeologists, professors from the University of North Florida will be speaking on this issue, on the Makama speaking to Mukwa. You'll learn a lot about them, their relationship with the French. And February 28th, you can look at that at www.jackshistory.com.